Unit 5 in business environment. Up till now we have talked about the economic environment. We have talked about the economic systems. We talked about the different kinds of economies which are there, different kinds of economic systems. We talked about the capitalist and the free market economy, and the communist or the command and control economy. And then we also talked about the mixed economies, and we understood that India is basically a mixed economy. And then we also understood that India has now been shifting a little towards right, that is, we are slowly tilting towards the capitalist kind of an economy, though we still have so many elements, so many attributes of a command and control economy. We also talked about the industrial policies. We understood the rationale, why do we have industrial policies, and we also talked about the two prominent industrial policies that we have had, the 1956 industrial policy and then the 1991 industrial policy, which is also known as new industrial policy or the new economic policy. Now this is going to be the last topic, this unit, wherein we are going to discuss the price controls. What do we mean by this? The controlling of the prices which is affected by the government in an economy, that is known as price control, right? Now we'll be talking about what price controls are, but you should understand that this is basically an element of government intervention in business. Why is government controlling the prices of items produced by the private enterprises, or for that matter those even produced by the public sector enterprises? Why is government doing that? So that is in a way an example of how governments intervene in the affairs, in the business affairs, right? So that is an example of state intervention, and we have discussed state intervention in businesses in unit 4, I hope you remember. So this is an example of state intervention in businesses, right? Now the price controls are there, and this is something that you can quote as an example of India still being an economy in which the government intervenes from time to time for various reasons, right? So let us now first talk about the price controls, as to what basically is price control. Price control is restriction on prices to be charged for goods and services, or goods or services. So there's a restriction that the government levies with respect to the prices that can be charged by the manufacturer or by the service provider for the goods that he is selling, or for the services that he is offering to the customer. So that is what we mean by prices. The prices are basically regulated by the government, right? And basically there are two types of price controls. One is called the price floor. That is the minimum price that has to be paid for a particular item or for a particular service is specified by the government, and nobody can pay less than that. So the minimum that has to be paid for a particular item or for a particular service is specified by the government, and nobody can pay less than that. This is an example of price floor. And what do we mean by the floor here? Floor means the surface. What we are basically saying is that the minimum prices are fixed by the government. You cannot pay less than that for a particular item, for a particular service. However, it is your discretion. If you want to pay more for that as a customer, it is allowed. You can, as a customer, pay more for that particular item or service, but you cannot pay less than the price floor which has been set by the government. Now, why do the governments do that? Should we first talk about the example so that you basically understand what a price floor is? So let me take the example first. Now there is an example of minimum wages. In India there is a minimum wages act also, and the governments, both the central and the state governments, they fix the minimum wages that can be paid to a laborer. The minimum wages that can be paid to a laborer, that is fixed by the government, right? And supposing you are getting your house constructed and you have hired a laborer, you cannot pay less than that minimum amount. Now this is an example of a price floor, right? And why, now I hope you've understood what price floors are, right? So basically, what is the reason why we have price floors? We have price floors. Number one reason, let us first start from here. Let us first discuss this one. Basically, it ensures minimum income for providers of certain goods. In this case, minimum wages. We have now ensured minimum income for those who are providing their physical labor, those who are providing their services in form of their labor. So for them, we have said that this is the minimum wage. You cannot pay less than that particular wage. So if you are making a particular laborer work in your fields, let's say, or if you are making him construct a road, if the government agencies are making him construct a road, if you have hired him for the construction of your house, you cannot pay less than that minimum amount, the price floor which has been fixed by the government. And the objective here is to ensure minimum income for the providers of certain goods, right? Likewise, is the example of the minimum support prices. What is a minimum support price mechanism? The government fixes prices for various agriculture commodities right in the beginning of the cropping season. Why does the government do that? So government fixes prices for wheat, government fixes prices for paddy crop, government fixes prices for the sugar cane, for cotton, and so many different types of crops. For example, pulses also, dalon ke liye. Why is the reason? Why does the government do that? This they do so that the farmers can be assured of at least a certain minimum amount of income, right? So the government fixes the prices, and there is a committee which basically does this work for the government. It conducts a study and then accordingly it fixes prices. So the objective number one is to ensure that the farmers do get paid a certain minimum for their hard work in the fields, for their labor in the fields, and they get a certain minimum amount at least for their crop. And the second objective is also to at least incentivize some kind of crops. Why? What will happen? Please understand. Suppose the government fixes minimum support prices for, let's say, wheat. I'm just giving an example. These do not correspond to the actual figures. Supposing the minimum support prices for wheat are, let's say 1000 rupees per quintal, and for pulses they are, let's say, 3000 rupees per quintal. Which particular crop would the farmer want to grow? Wheat or the cereals or the pulses? The pulses, because naturally there the minimum support prices are more than the support prices in case of wheat. So naturally, if he is selling his pulses, he would naturally be getting a higher return, and that is why the farmers can be incentivized to produce a particular crop and not to produce other crops. So this also is done by government to incentivize farmers to switch from one crop to the other, right? So these are the objectives that the government fulfills by this minimum support price policy, which is again an example of a price floor. Other objectives can also be there to for fixing the price floors. Why the price floors are fixes? The other objective can be enabling investments in priority industries. How does this happen? This happens, let's say, supposing the government wants investments in some particular sectors of the economy. Now, naturally somebody would invest only if that particular entity, that particular firm is assured of a certain return from the investment. So when the government sets the minimum price at which the products produced by that particular sector of the economy can be sold to the customers, though this will assure the investors that since the minimum prices have been fixed, at least this is the minimum amount of return which they would be able to earn for their investment, on their investment, and they would be incentivized to, they would feel motivated to invest in that particular sector. So in that sense, the government also uses it as a carrot to attract the investors in a particular sector of the economy, which is a priority sector for the country, right? So these are the reasons why we have price floors. Now let us talk about the price ceilings. Basically, when we talk about price controls, you actually think more in terms of price ceilings, the maximum prices which are fixed by the government, right? However, we have seen that there could be price floors also. So the price ceilings are the maximum prices which can be charged by the service provider or by the manufacturer of the good for the product or the service that he is selling to the customer. Now please understand, price ceiling is an obligation for the seller. Why? Because he cannot charge beyond the price ceiling, beyond the maximum amount set as the price ceiling, while the price floor was an obligation for the customer, because in the case of price floors, the customers could not have paid less than the price floors, right? So please understand that while the price floors are an obligation for the customer, he cannot pay less than that. He cannot pay less than the price floor. Price ceilings are an obligation for the sellers. They cannot sell at a higher price than what has been specified in the price ceilings, right? So the maximum price at which the products or the services can be sold, this is the price ceiling. It protects consumer interest. Now here please understand, the whole objective is to protect consumer interest by ensuring affordability during shortages. Why would prices increase? Prices generally increase in times of shortages. So because there is a dip in the supply and the demand still remains the same, there would be a shortage in the market, and because of which you might have read the laws of economics, demand and supply, naturally there would be an increase in prices. But if that happens, the poor sections of the society might have to suffer because they may not be able to pay that much. So in such cases, in such instances, the government brings in price ceilings so that the consumer interest can be protected, right? Okay. Now let us discuss this point first, because this is a more connected one. Ensure access by poorer sections. I have discussed this particular example. If you keep a price ceiling, the product cannot be sold at more than that particular price. Naturally, the poor sections would be able to access that particular product or afford that particular product. However, if you allow the prices to rise to whatever level they may rise, if you allow the prices to be fixed by the market forces, then in that case the prices may rise to any extent, and then the poor sections may not be able to afford. Now this has happened in the cases of the drug price control order for 384 essential drugs. Now please understand, in India there is a drug price control order, and this order basically fixes the price ceilings for 384 essential drugs. So there are price caps. At times price ceilings are known as price caps, right? Because the cap is, you put the cap on your head, right? So that is why price ceilings are known as price cap. So the price cap has been fixed for 384 essential drugs. These drugs cannot be sold at a price higher than that specified in the price ceilings. So the maximum price at which these drugs can be sold has been specified, right? And this has been done by the drug price control order, right? And these are essential drugs which are very much required. They are very much essential drugs. So first of all, a list is prepared of essential drugs, and then this price ceiling is brought in through the drug price control order. Naturally, if the prices are under check, if the prices are under control, they are not allowed to rise to a great level. Naturally, the poor sections of the society would be able to afford these essential drugs, very, very important drugs, right? Likewise, in public transport also, there are price ceilings at times. If you go to State Road Transport Corporation, I hope you remember that the state government fixes the prices that can be charged. It fixes the rate at which the prices can be charged. So it will fix the rate at which the prices would be charged. It would fix, for example, per kilometer basis. And depending on that, the prices can be charged for a particular distance by the State Road Transport Corporations or the Uttarakhand Parivan Nigam, which is there in our state, and the Parivan Nigams in different states. So this is again an example of a price ceiling, right? So let me show you this photograph which talks about the price ceilings in cases of stents and knee replacements. And this photograph shows that the price control has been brought in and the prices have decreased. Stents are used to actually treat blockages in the heart. So that is a device, that is a medical device which is known as stents. And likewise, knee replacements, people who are suffering from arthritis, they can get their knees replaced. This generally is a surgery which people go for in their 60s and 70s, right? So for these two items, the prices now have been brought under control. So the stent prices are got under control, and the knee replacements have also been brought under price control. So they cannot be sold beyond a particular amount. In fact, because of this, the cost of knee surgery has now almost reduced to 1/3 of what it used to be earlier before the price ceilings came into effect. Earlier, it would have costed an individual almost 12 lakhs to get his knees operated by, but now it costs somewhere in the range of 4 lakhs, right? Only because of the price control. Many a times, I hope we have read about the monopolies. We have read about the monopolies in the Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act. There we have seen that when a particular firm acquires monopolistic control of a particular sector of economy, then they tend to increase their prices. So in such cases also, prices are fixed by government so that such monopolistic exploitation of the customers cannot take place. So such monopolistic exploitation is not affected by the few monopolies which are there in that particular sector of the economy, right? So for that also, government brings in price ceilings, right? But then there is a disadvantage, drawback of price ceiling. What is a drawback? Naturally, if you are fixing a cap, fixing a ceiling on the prices, don't you think it will repulse private investment, because they would not be able to sell their product at a very high price, and they would not be able to earn a supernormal profit. So the private investment would be repulsed. Private firms would not want to invest in such sectors, because there has been a limit which has been fixed for the maximum prices that they can charge from the customers. And naturally, the new product research will also get impacted. This has happened in the cases of drugs. Now, this is one criticism of this drug price control order. What has happened because of the fixing of price ceilings in cases of drugs? What has happened basically now? You cannot sell beyond a particular price. However, the argument made by the drug manufacturers, companies engaged in drug production, is that they have to spend a lot in research and development while they are trying to come up with a new drug for a novel disease. So the research and development entails a huge cost, and when they are fixing a high price, they are basically trying to recover those costs. And so it has been said that because of this drug price control order, and because of this price control in case of medical devices in India, what has basically happened is the companies feel that there is no use investing a lot in new drug discovery, new product research, because even if they invest a lot of money and discover a new drug, they would not be able to recover their investment by charging a higher price in the market because of the price control existing in the Indian market. So this is one criticism of the price controls, and this is one criticism of the price ceiling controls, right? And ultimately what will happen then? There is no new investment, no new product research, no new product is coming up in the market. Then ultimately there would be a scarcity of these products in the market, which will ultimately lead to again an increase in the prices. So there might be scarcity. So what was intended to have a good impact, what was intended for the benefit of the poor sections, ultimately may backfire, and the poor sections may simply not be able to have drugs in the first place, because the drug manufacturing companies reduce their investment in India, and they may stop looking for and stop spending in discovering new drugs. So new drugs would not be coming to the market, and ultimately the patients may have to suffer. So this is a basic criticism of the price controls. This is a criticism of the price ceilings basically, right? With this, we are wrapping up our unit 5, and now we have completed the whole syllabus in business environment. Very soon we'll have a test, so please be ready for the test, and I hope you are reading the newspapers also. Whatever we have studied in business environment, until unless you are supplementing this knowledge with your newspaper readings, I am telling you, you might pass the exams, but this may not be sufficient to bag you a job once you graduate from here. Once you complete your graduation, you have to understand what is happening in your business environment. If you want to join a corporate, if you want to join the corporate sector, or if you want to set up your own business, and unless you have good understanding of what is happening in the business environment, which you can only have from the newspapers or the magazines, unless you have that kind of knowledge, you may not be able to successfully carry on your business. Even if you join a corporate, you would not be very productive for them as well, right? So to be aware of what is happening in the business environment, I'm telling you again that you have to continuously keep on reading newspaper. Now, reading newspaper should be a habit which you should indulge in almost on a daily basis, in fact on a daily basis, right? So thank you very much for your time, and do remember my advice.